Something stood out to me straight away when I watched Poor Things, the latest film from The Favourite and The Lobster director Yorgos Lanthimos, and that was the British accents. 6 of the main roles in the film are British characters, played by American actors, and unfortunately their accents range from cringeworthy to, is this actually an alien speaking instead? A lot of accents in films leave something to be desired.
That there is what you might call a doorway to a place of enchantment.
So I only bother mentioning this because the wonky accents in Poor Things acts as a kind of emblem for the unevenness of the film generally. There's a lot to like here, don't get me wrong, but ultimately I think this movie is a pretty forgettable one that few people will be talking about in a decade's time. Based on the award-winning book by the Scottish writer Alasdair Gray, who unfortunately died a couple of years before the movie was made, Poor Things tells the story of Emma Stone's Bella, a young woman living in London in the care of renowned surgeon Godwin Baxter, played by Willem Dafoe. Bella has been sheltered her whole life, knows little of the world, and at the start is pretty darn happy that way. She also has a bit of a history that I won't spoil here, but suffice to say, when she finds out about it, it sets her on a path of personal exploration and growth for the rest of the story. When she meets Duncan Wedderburn, a frisky lawyer played by Mark Ruffalo, she jumps at the chance to set off on an adventure. Cue hijinks and tomfoolery across the port of Lisbon, on a cruise ship to Alexandria, and finally in the streets of Paris. But as Bella's knowledge of the world grows, so does her understanding of the rakish Duncan, and she decides that maybe she'd be better off without him. But can Bella forge a life of her own, or will the men around her tie her down again as they once did in London? The first thing that strikes you about Poor Things is its use of colour. It employs a similar technique to one of my favourite movies, 2002's Hero. In that film, each colour represented a different version of the story's events. In Poor Things, colour is used to show how far along Bella is in her awakening and understanding of the world. At the start, monochrome. By the end, all red lipstick and sunny drinks in the garden. The look and feel of the film is unconventional generally, in the same way that La La Land was a few years ago, harkening back to a different era of Hollywood, with painted backdrops and wide-angle fisheye lenses. Like with La La Land, the costumes are truly brilliant, and parts of the film look like they're from an impressionist painting. Rich, warm reds and browns butt up against flickering flames. It's a feast for the eyes, and certainly worth watching for that alone. The acting is mostly great, with Emma Stone a standout. She's impressed me since I first saw her in 2007's Superbad, and she absolutely owns this film in a performance that has to leave her a clear favourite for this year's Best Actress Oscar. From the very start, where she's portraying an adult child, all gurning and tantrums and bulging eyes, to the very end, where she plays an educated, cold, calculating woman, Emma Stone doesn't miss a beat. Of the others, I enjoyed Willem Dafoe's performance as the weary Godwin. Apparently, Dafoe had a pretty arduous makeup regimen for the role, 4 hours in, 2 hours out every day, arriving at 3 AM. But I'd be pleased to know it was worth it, and he does a good job at treading the fine line between caring father and relentless scientist. It's Mark Ruffalo's performance, though, as the rakish Duncan Wedderburn that raises a few questions. Ruffalo was unsure about the role before taking it, thinking he might be a bit old for all the physical comedy, but that's not the problem here. Physically, Ruffalo's great, as is everyone in the movie, and it's pretty funny at times because of that. No, Ruffalo struggles because there just isn't much meat to his role. His character seems to be there just to highlight the oddness of Bella herself, and when your character's just bones, there's not much to chew on for an actor. I doubt at the end of his career Ruffalo's going to be remembering Poor Things. It's in the story and characters that the movie falls down generally, which I suppose is more of a reflection of the book than the direction of the film. At first glance, Poor Things is just a Frankenstein rip-off, the age-old story of how the monsters we create come back to haunt us. At second glance, it's a film about men, and how awful they can be, how foolish, stupid. Men circle Bella's life, and they all do harm in some way. But actually, I think it's a story about power, hence the movie's title, Poor Things. Those who have power over others, and that power can come in many forms, knowledge, parental power, kindness, tend to misuse it eventually. The poor things suffer, and by the end of the film we get the sense that Bella might be about to go that way herself. But here's the rub. Lanthimos' movie takes an awfully long time and a lot of extravagant scenes to say this about power, something we all knew by the time we were 5 years old. During an inventive first half, you're glued to the screen, watching to find out which bonkers thing is going to happen next. But by the midpoint, when Bella's getting herself into yet another scrape, the trick starts to wear thin and you're waiting for that new idea that Poor Things is going to bring to the table. Unfortunately, it meanders a lot in the second half and never really gets there. The finer detail of the storytelling isn't amazing either. Characters sometimes act in ways that let the scriptwriter show the audience what they want to show rather than being consistent with their behaviour. The pacing's mostly good, apart from that wandering second half. Exposition is as clumsy as ever, and the film is quite an awkward one to watch at times, especially when you stop and think about what's really happening. This is purposeful, of course. You can't show the misuse of power by spending the movie skipping in flowery meadows, but after a while, all the scenes of debauchery add up. Like I said at the start of this video, I don't mean to be too harsh on Poor Things. Hollywood has got so cookie cutter that the more creativity we see, the more unconventionality, the more David Lynchian a movie feels, the better. And you can't say Poor Things isn't different. But different on its own isn't enough. For a story to hit home, it has to all fit together, all be pulling in the same direction. And like those 6 wonky British accents I mentioned at the start, Poor Things struggles with that a bit, which is a real shame. Anyway, nothing more to say. This is Movie Mavericks signing out.